nos va a acompañar Don Leyn, que es un especialista en la industria de Internet de las cosas de Cisco. Y contarles algo, Don es un especialista en redes inalámbricas de Cisco. Él ha trabajado desafiantes proyectos en más de 60 países en todo el mundo, desarrollando complicadas soluciones autónomas y teleremotas para minas, puertos y terminales, así como la industria pesada. Así que lo que vamos a disfrutar mucho de Dan, a quien ya ustedes han conocido el día de ayer. Sin más preámbulo, Don Leyn, welcome here. Un aplauso para Don, por favor. Un aplauso.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. So this is the second day I followed Mark, and I've discovered something. We all have something in common, but I like to say I am taller than my hair. That's why it's not there, or my kids affected it. So today we're going to talk a little bit about security and mines, but really the transformation or the convergence of IT to OT and security, and to understand what does it mean, how do we go about it. You know, many of us are dealing with various things in our mining operations or any operation that we're dealing with, and we find ourselves struggling as an IT professional. For those of you who are IT professionals, I know that we have a mix of both here. But the IT professionals are being challenged and asked to discuss and work more and support more and secure more the OT environments, the operational technology environments. And I'm, as you mentioned, I'm with Cisco. I'm a mining specialist at Cisco. I'm in the IoT division. And I don't really like to call it Internet of Things. I actually call it industrial operational technology. Or some people will call it industrial Internet of Things. And it's really about that industrial side of the business. And from that, you know, we find ourselves dealing with the various trends in the industry. You know, productivity is very important to us. We can, you know, increase productivity but lower costs. Sometimes it doesn't always work that way. Mine worker health and safety, number one for most of us. You know, sustainability. I mentioned this yesterday. Sustainability is something that's going to continue to grow and grow and grow, and it's going to be something that's in the forefront for all of us. Soon we'll see sustainability as the biggest piece of what we're dealing with at the moment. And then attracting new talent and labor and skilled labor. This is a challenge for everybody. You know, you're working through having a problem. You know, we came out of the pandemic, and many people had a hard time finding talent or keeping talent. And so, and the talent today, they don't want to go to a mine. They don't want to sit out there on a truck or a dozer and run a piece of equipment. They want to sit in a nice little room, you know, on a chair and run a set of remote controls. So we want to figure out ways to introduce technology, and we also need to take in consideration the supply chain. How does the supply chain impact our business, both coming into our companies, our organizations, and then going out? We've all dealt with the supply chain issues. We at Cisco are dealing with them on a daily basis. It's always a struggle, and it will continue to be for a short period of time, we hope. But it's a supply chain that's going to impact us. But today, as we work through all of these trends, securing them is very important. How do we secure them everywhere and, you know, and everything and everywhere, everyone? And that's going to be an important fact. And I like to say that, you know, what is security and the role it plays in the mining sector? I guess I have the there twice. Wow. An effective security program is one that is based on a well-balanced integration of technology, and this part's very important. Highly trained personnel with flexible processes and procedures. If you cannot be flexible, you will not be successful. You cannot be rigid and stick to one thing. As you've heard many people speaking here in the last 2 days, the industry is dynamic. It's always changing. It's always moving forward. Sometimes not as fast as we'd like, other times. But we have to be flexible to support that. The security aspect of it is one major piece that needs to be flexible. Work through those processes and procedures, have them in place, but understand they are guaranteed to change. And if you think they won't, you need to get into a different industry, because they will. It is a guarantee. So we go out and we talk about what does security mean to companies. And this is a couple of examples. I'm just going to focus on two of them. One of them is AP Moller Maersk. I mentioned I'm also the mining specialist as well as the ports and terminal specialist within Cisco IoT. And AP Moller, which is at the time was the largest shipping company in the world, now they're number 2 or 3, but they had an attack in 2017 that impacted them by $300 million. I mentioned yesterday in the panel, how can you monetize security? How can you go to your CFO or anybody you're asking for money to implement a security program? $300 million is the impact on AP Moller Maersk. Some studies have taken place after that, and the expected impact was that it was roughly $1 billion. $1 billion for one cyber attack. Why did this happen? What came about? AP Moller shut down their operations. AP Moller, the largest shipping company in the world, couldn't send goods around the world. They couldn't receive goods around the world. They own AP terminals. They have a shipping line. And as a result, the entire supply chain globally was impacted. $1 billion that we know of. Norsk Hydro, metals and mining, $70 million impact to them. This was in 2019. And a mining company in Europe. And the estimation there that the impact around this was somewhere around $300 to $350 million. These are vendors that couldn't perform, couldn't do the things they needed to do. These are the company, the workers, everything that was an impact. These are valid dollars that will allow you to really bring it to your leadership and help them understand, what does this mean for us? Do you want to take the risk and spend and hope that you don't have to worry about losing $70 million? I like what Mark said about, when you talk about investors, is that you don't want to lose it. We all want to earn it, but you don't want to lose what you have. And not securing properly, you're going to lose it. So growing sense of urgency that we see in the industry, any industry, but mining particularly, high-profile attacks, the war in Ukraine is an implication. We're seeing increased regulation, legislation, and frameworks. Ransomware is a plague hitting everyone. The shareholders and our boards are now starting to pay closer attention, especially if, like I said yesterday, if you're having one of your employees tack a boss to get them to convince to spend money. This is another important one right here. Insurance market is wavering, withdrawing, or being indecisive. The insurance market, they see a truck, they can insure it. They see a dozer, they can insure it. They see something that's tangible, that they can touch and feel and hold, and they feel comfortable insure it. When they cannot see a cyber attack, when they cannot see what they're doing or what the potential is, they're struggling on how to insure that. What are they insuring? So we all have to work together and try to get the insurance industry to understand that this is, the security itself is insurance policy alone. But the insurance industry needs to understand that this could have a potential impact on our operations. And then, continued coming together of technologies. These are urgencies that we need to take advantage of and realize that there's many, many technologies that can help us achieve a better secure solution. So I'll talk about a couple of vulnerabilities that, we at Cisco, we see a lot of things happen. We monitor things on a daily basis. Talos is one of our areas. And these are some of the things that we've seen attacked. And I've kind of highlighted on a couple of ones that are impacting the mining industry. We see attacks on firewalls, malvertising. We see attacks on the remote desktop. Pandemic really increased that a lot. Remote work and threat landscape was an increase. Ransomware. Credential dumping, industrial IoT threats. This is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just a small amount of the threats that we're seeing on a very, very consistent basis. And some of them you don't even know are hitting you because you haven't put in the proper security solutions to monitor this, whether it's a cybersecurity solution or some other security event, whether it's from the IT side or into the OT side. So we got to do these things to make it working. So keep your eyes on the risk. We want to be risk aversion as much as we can. The industrial environment is not a closed system. Used to be, not anymore. Change is the only way it's constant. It's going to continue to change. People are going to change. Processes are going to change. Getting back to that flexibility of our processes and procedures. The threat landscape is constantly changing, independent of the control systems and operational activities. So hence, it's never a static, environment. It's always moving forward. And industrial cybersecurity is a journey. Just like any security solution or any implementation of what you do, it's always a journey. Everything's a journey. You got to know where you're going to go. When we all take a vacation, we don't sit there and just pick up our bags and pack them and say, I'm going to Europe, or I'm going to go to Peru. We plan, we develop plans, and we go through the process, and we figure out where we're going to pack. I travel an enormous amount all over the world, and I figure out what I'm going to wear, for every single day, and as a result, I can pack in 5-10 minutes and be very comfortable with it. I've been doing it for a number of years, and we can take those same concepts and apply them to a planning process that we're going to do for our cybersecurity journey. So we have to understand our assets. We have to understand, what's going on, where we're at, why we're at, and exactly what's in our operations. There we go. So we did a survey with Gartner. Cisco did this, and it was we surveyed 100 IT engineering and security professionals. Remember, this is 100. If we had done this with 1,000 or 10,000, I'm sure the results would be a little bit different, but the ratio would be pretty close to the same. 11% said, the question is, what stage of your OT security are you in? 11% said they're just getting started. A little bit of a low number. 22% said they're in the implementation process. 44% are advancing it. 16% said mostly there. 7% said they're converging. 0, all done. I don't know if we'll ever hit a number that's higher, 5 or 10% all done, because it's a constantly evolving market. This is OT, 0% all done. Now, this is out of 100 surveyed. We asked them the next question: what's driving your OT need? Your need for OT visibility and security, need to assess risk, increased use of shadow IT solutions, regulatory pressure, company suffered attack. 34%. I would have expected that would be a little bit higher. I'm sure if we surveyed, a larger sampling, 1,000 or 10,000, we would have seen probably that stand up a little bit more, because 100, is it guaranteed that 100 were attacked? Probably. But as I said yesterday, will they admit it? And so if we have a larger grouping, then they would probably admit it. Board management, investor pressure, 19%. They need to see that this is an impact on their business, and they need to see what kind of monetary impact it would be. The other thing is that, we deal with the complexity, and so we have to understand the people, the processes, and the organizational structure. And again, this is part of that IT to OT path to security. And so our IT NetSec teams need to work very closely with the InfoSec SecOp teams, and then they all need to work with the OT and engineering team. Don't run in silos. And in a second here, you're going to see why. When we run in silos, we don't really understand what's happening. And we go through and we see things like, the question here was asked, what are your main obstacles? 74% of the cost and complexity is an obstacle that we see for building out a span network or deploying network taps. 65% OT teams' reluctance to modify the industrial network. It's, we say in the US, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you don't touch it, it's working fine. Stay away from my world. But that's not the reality anymore. 50% still have to demonstrate the value of gaining OT visibility. When they start finding that out, they'll start seeing holes in their solution. Lack of budget, do not have access or permission to the access switches to secure these networks. So these two worlds are converging. IT is now being tasked with securing the OT network. So we have to really work together. But before we can do that, we have to understand the difference between the two. So when we're dealing with an IT environment, on the left here, security, we see it as cybersecurity. In OT, we see security as safety. Not a bad thing, but this is how it's reality. IT teams manage data and care most about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. OT teams manage the processes and care much about throughput and uptime. Okay? And so it's very important for both teams to understand what's important to each one of them. IT equipment are usually more known, more modern, I'm not saying 100% modern, and more controlled. OT devices can be 10 to 20 years or more old and are often managed by third parties. And that's a struggle because you output all of your OT operations, not all of them, to a lot of third-party companies. So they come in with their own ideas, thought processes, and now you have to manage all of these different parties to make it work. IT networks are segmented, OT networks are generally flat. And IT attacks can be well identified. You can find viruses, worms, or various things. An OT attack, and I like this one, looks like a legitimate instruction to industrial controls. They're probably being attacked, as I stated yesterday in the panel, but they don't even realize it because it's probably thinking, and to their mind, it looks like an industrial control. So you have to pull together. You have to bring the two groups together. You need to work. You cannot work in silos any longer. Silos in any industry just do not survive. So you need to understand the behaviors of an OT environment. OT devices are accessing the internet is considered abnormal. Placing OT devices in quarantine. You can't do that. You place an OT device in quarantine, you could shut down a processing facility. You could shut down your conveyors, your crushers, all these things that are required. You could shut down something that's going to be life and death for someone working in this environment. So you have to be very, very careful. So IT just can't take the normal thing of, I don't have my laptop today. You can deal without it for a few hours. Not the same in the OT environment. So understand those environments. Be comfortable with both sides. Unconnected network segments are common. Unsupported OS, unpatched systems, and outdated signatures are common. And then machine processes are generally running 24/7, 365. So these are important things to understand between the two of them. And if you don't have that figured out, it'll come back to you really quick and you'll be dealing with several challenges. Oops. Okay. Today's world and our challenges, whether it's energy, manufacturing, transportation, mining, it's relatively simple. But as we move tomorrow, we're going into smart industry, smart mining, intelligent mines, Industry 4.0, distributed devices, automation, flexibility, user interfaces, smart grids. All of these add additional complexity, and all of these add additional issues in regards to security. We want to make sure that we're covering these holes. It's going to get more complex, and you need to start working with your OT departments, and they need to hear from you. So this is another thing that we found. What are OT professionals telling us as we go out into the field? Everything's fine. I've deployed a high-quality automation solution, and my operations are secure. I can't tell you personally how many times I have heard that. And then whether it's a partner or it's someone that goes out themselves and they do a full assessment. These are not all of them, but these are the highlights of what we find when an assessment's done. Bear in mind, the guy just said everything's great, it's working wonderful. Security patches are not installed. Very, very common. Firmware uploaded over FTP solutions without a signature. Very unsecure. Default credentials used to log into systems. Passwords 1234 or 12345678. Where is he? DNS queries to Amazon. Unauthorized remote access by subcontractors. Contractors who really shouldn't be doing some of the things they're doing, and they're reaching out into the rest of our systems. This one is a very common one. Done some cybersecurity demonstrations. We have a tool at Cisco called CyberVision, and we did a demonstration for a mine, and I think I mentioned this yesterday. We set up a system, and they turned it on. We did an evaluation, and two gentlemen looked at each other and said, I thought those PLCs were discontinued and removed 5 years ago. Decommissioned assets still connected. Very, very common in the industrial world. OT network fully interconnected with IT, unnecessary network communications, Windows XP, and a variety of other things that the reality is finding. So these are the things that you cannot listen to your OT person. They're not an IT person. They're not the person that understands the networking and security, but they have to be connected. So I'm going to be moving here because I'm running out of time. Security, and OT requires new IT procedures. So some assets cannot be patched. You have to be very careful with it. You can't just patch them or make an update or send different instructions to it, because if you don't, or if you do, you could disrupt the operation and you can create an unsafe environment. More connectivity means air gap is not sufficient anymore. OT systems have always been air gapped. not effective anymore. The data that's coming out, these data scientists that are coming into the mining industry, they need this data to make the mine more efficient and effectivity. Low visibility over disconnected endpoints. If you can't see them, it's kind of hard to protect what you don't see. Then multiple third parties involved in day-to-day operations. These are all very, very important things. So what can we do, or how can you start? Most customers don't have accurate asset and inventory. 55% lower no confidence. He's pushing me here, I can tell you. Blind to what their assets are communicating with. So get your industrial control systems, monitor them, know what's there, go through the process and understand what's in front of you. And make sure that IT, OT, CSO, you're all working together. You're not three silos, you're one large team. Come together, communicate, and understand what each other has, and don't assume that yours is better or worse than the other. Work together to get to that point. And then building a converged IT, OT, SOC. You've got to go through asset discovery, network segmentation, threat detection, investigate and respond. These are all common things. Want to learn more about it? Talk to us throughout the entire day today or later on, and we can develop something and have a meeting and share what we know in the industry. There you have it. 4 seconds left.